Hi, I'm Chris Grimm, and this is Deep Work Fast. And this week, I want to talk to you about a principle, a concept, if you will, that is very difficult for most people to get their head around. I spend a ton of time explaining this and then re explaining it. So I thought, you know what? Let's just get it on the record here. People can watch the replay. And the principle is how you do anything is how you do everything. And I just dropped a blog about this, and it has some different information than what I'm going to tell you today. So let's just dig in. So, how you do anything is how you do everything. Now, earlier I said people resist this. So first, when I bring this to people, they're like, "No, that's not true. That's not true." Because everything that I'm doing all day, every day is highly sometimes reactionary to other people, and the context changes, and I'm different at home than I am at work, and blah, blah, blah. I say blah, blah, blah because after 27 years of coaching people and also doing a lot of hard work myself, I've come to realize that guess what? That principle, which I think was originally coined by a lady named Martha Beck, but there are a few other teachers who have written books and talked about this, actually more than a few, over the years. And it is worth exploring. And I believe actually critically important if in fact you want to propel yourself forward, upwards, maybe in your career, if you want to propel yourself forward in your life, like you want to be better, you want to be more successful, you want to make more money, you want to have a happier life, you want your home life to be better. This is a principle that I would love you to consider accepting and adopting. And I'm going to tell you how to do that. So, first of all, the foundation of how you do anything is how you do everything requires a deep level of self-awareness and then some acceptance and what I'll call compassion for yourself. Because most of the time, when we settle into this level of exploration, we find the things that we don't like about ourselves, and we probably are going to run into the things that other people have given us feedback around and we haven't chosen to address, right? It makes you feel defensive. Maybe it's just something that you tried to work on and you couldn't fix. And so you've just put that in the closet, if you will, and are going to pretend like that doesn't exist. So this doesn't allow any pretending, which is one of the other reasons why I think people resist, because how you do anything is how you do everything means we pretty much have to look at what's way under the hood and see how it's manifesting itself in the everythings, right? So one of those ideas is to look at your default modes. Our defaults, by the way, are the things that are running us even when we're trying to be perfect, or our ego, our identity, our work self, our parent self, all the different versions of us, right? Sometimes, most of the time, we have ideas about what that should look like. Sometimes that's what we've decided, right? I'm going to be the CMO of this company, and here's what that identity is going to look like. I'm going to dress like this. I'm going to talk like this. And then, of course, if you're a corporate CMO, I'm going to use this example. Most likely your company has expectations. Your boss has expectations. The other people around you have expectations. And then, of course, there's probably other layers of it too, which you learn along the way that you go, oh, I want to be like that. And so oftentimes we take on new forms of identity, not just at work, by the way. We do this at home too. And I see the biggest shift when people become a parent and your kids start paying attention, right? Like they get to that age, somewhere around third grade, I think, where you realize they start noticing who you are as a human, and parents then kind of naturally then start to pretend that they're more perfect than they are, that they're more righteous than they are. And I would say that's the same, by the way. I see it with leaders and managers and parenting, right? It seems to be a parallel, which is when we have other people that we need to influence, oftentimes that identity gets new criteria and new ways that we're trying to not just pretend to be those things. I think most people with good intention do try to be better or do try to make different and better decisions, specifically when we think other people are watching. But I want to anchor this back because if we're trying on new behaviors and we're trying on new things and they're not our default yet, it means most likely that we're going through a time period that could be forever or it could be a short time period where that's not natural for you. And there's dissonance in there, right? And what that means, everybody, is that it means when we are consciously incompetent at something, doesn't mean you're bad at it when I say that. It means you haven't mastered it yet. So when we are conscious or we know we don't know how to do something, we know we don't know how to deal with the politics of our work environment. We know we're new in a role and now we have to grow into a new set of executive behaviors. Or like I said, oftentimes when people become parents, I see in coaching that now they're starting to take on new parenting things that they have never done before. And so there's a time period while we're trying to learn and master it that we are consciously incompetent, right? We know we don't know how to do it yet. And so we're a little insecure. All of that is very real. And the more we try to pretend like it's not real, unfortunately, the more the people around us know that we're faking it. And so this is an important thing about how you do anything, is how you do everything, is you getting very, very real with yourself first about what you're faking, why you're faking it, what about your natural style, your natural defaults, your personality, your belief system has to shift before that new version of you and the new set of behaviors, the new set of skills become mastered. Because if you think about it, it takes practice. Because if we don't actually practice to the point of mastery of anything, by the way, it means that new thing it'll crack under stress, right? You won't be able to sustain it. And so it's important that you come into the more deeper thinking. And we do this in coaching where I say to people, no, forget the thing you are trying to do at the moment. And let's come back behind it and let's see what has to be worked on in your defaults so that we can enable the new behavior, the new skills to actually become your new natural way of functioning. It may mean that you have to explore what the old ways are, what the old thinking is, the way you've been up until now. And in that exploration, we would have to talk about, first of all, what is real? Where do you have natural competence? And where do you not have it so that faking it isn't sustainable? And I want to give a real life example because I know when I explain this to people, even in one-on-one, their brain has a hard time getting it. And so if you're struggling, I want to help you, right? So I'm going to give you an example. Maybe I'll give you more than one. So this is a very real example. I won't use names, but it happens in real life, which is I was called to coach an executive. This was this executive's first C-level job in a pretty big company. And when the boss called and said, I need you to coach this person, the boss kind of told me a story about all the reasons why the person needed coaching. And I was like, oh, okay. So we've just promoted this person to the biggest role of their life, their dream job. They always wanted to be this. But the person, as ready as they might have been for that promotion, they weren't completely ready because most of the time that's what happens. right? We get thrust into that new role or into that new situation. And even if we think we're ready and everybody thinks we're ready, reality shows up. And all of a sudden, all the ways that you weren't ready, well, they're going to be right there waiting for you. And so, in this person's effort to look and feel confident, look and feel competent, they had to fake a lot of things. And of course, everybody around that person knew. And I will say, in this situation, they waited a little too long to get coaching for this person because the situation had gotten bad enough that the person's veneer was cracking under stress, right? Because when you take that next biggest job and you've been promoted, well, of course it's going to come, right? The problems are going to be harder and more complicated. What happens oftentimes when people get promoted to higher levels of leadership in organizations is that the politics is also more complex and more difficult to navigate, but specifically difficult to navigate if you're the newbie, right? If this is your first C-level and you've got a team of people around you who are your peers, but they've all been there for a long time. And so they've got the game down. Some of them designed the game, right? And you're new and you're trying to navigate it. And so that's what this person was doing. And sometimes they were being successful, but a lot of the time they weren't actually being successful. And so, of course, their ego was getting hurt by that and they were getting afraid. So when I say stress cracks the veneer, that's part of what I'm saying. Because stress can come from you knowing on the inside that you're an imposter, that you're faking it. I've talked before about imposter syndrome, right? Sometimes that's made up in our head, but sometimes parts of it are based on reality. Like I am actually faking this. And so I was like, okay, time out. Give me this person and let's start to do some work together. And so I'm sharing this with you because part of starting to understand that how you do anything is how you do everything means that 50% of the things that you do can't look and feel put together, locked, confident, and the other 50% look wobbly and have it be a story that everybody isn't seeing and knowing. And so what happens is that the good stuff oftentimes gets overshadowed by the bad moments. Because most of the time, our bad moments where we're insecure or fearful or saying and doing things that aren't quite right for us and the other people around us starts to become a part of your narrative, which is I call your personal brand. It's how people are experiencing you. And I'm sure if you step back and if this is triggering to you, just step back and detach for a minute and just think about other people that you know. Everybody knows. Everybody knows the good and the bad. Everybody knows after a certain point when people are really confident, competent, and actually like locked and know what they're doing, and people know when you don't. So no matter how good you think you are at faking it, or all the behaviors and activity that you put in place to try to cover up when you're not feeling competent, when you're not feeling confident, right? That's now a part of the brand. The cover up, the extra behavior, the energy and effort that probably is coming from insecurity and fear is now built into the story. So let's come back to the story I was telling you, because with that person that I started coaching, that's actually what we had to unwind. He and I alone had to spend time unwinding and getting acceptance of what was real. And so I want to give you some practical ways of thinking about this so that your ego doesn't get triggered and you start to realize, oh, okay, so how I do anything is how I do everything. It's all part of your brand. The best way to manage that is not to look external first, not to worry about what other people think, not to try and people please or twist yourself into a little pretzel to be what you think the place and the people need of you, but to go inside first and be real with yourself about all the things that are working and the things that are not yet working, but you've been trying to fake or muscle through or whatever, cover up. And then choose to be intentional about improving some of these things, which means you might have to actually prioritize that list. I do that with people all the time. We rank the list, we prioritize the list, and I'm like, okay, we cannot do all these things at once. So let's pick the most important things. And so then we can talk about important to whom. Well, probably important to you, otherwise you won't do the work. So let's find the things on the list. So for instance, that person I was talking about, right? One of the things that showed up in his insecurity in his new role was that he was showing up to meetings and he had to do what he felt like was a lot of homework to keep up with the conversation and the dynamics that were going on in the C-suite. And so he and I broke that down so that we could actually talk about what is it? Is it the technical part of the business? Is it the financial part of the business? What are the conversations where you feel the least confident, that you're having to do the most outside homework so that you can just barely keep up? And it turned out that he needed some business skills outside of all the other places where he was a rock star, frankly. He didn't have an MBA. He didn't grow up in the side of the business that was always looking at the financials. It turned out once we got under there that that was actually one of the biggest issues we had, and it was fixable. So when I say choosing to be intentional, I meant with this person, I'm like, look, can we just admit that this is a thing? Because everybody's feeling it and everybody's watching it, but most of the people don't have time, and it's not even their job to figure out what it is that's causing this issue, but his credibility had been damaged. And so he and I had to go to his boss, be open about where he probably needed some education. They sent him to an executive program that was about strategic financial literacy for non-CFOs and non-financial leaders. And guess what happened? His confidence level around everything changed. He started to actually, on the inside, feel like he was a true C-level executive. He participated in meetings differently. He spoke to his peers differently. He coached his people differently because now a whole new world had opened up that he didn't even know he was missing. And by the way, this was not a young man who was new to their business or their industry. This was just someone who had spent his whole life in sales, not running the deep operations of the business, and not being in finance. Not uncommon, everybody. And so we boosted his confidence, and then his personal brand changed. People saw that how he did anything was how he did everything. And now his credibility was not just up, the results were obvious. And so everybody started to say, oh yeah, that was awesome. This has been a great decision. He's an amazing member of the team. And he started to be able to open up more. His relationship with some of his peers completely changed. They saw him now as an expert, the subject matter expert coming from the part of the business where he had been in before. And it didn't take very long before he had a seat at the table, not just was sitting at the table, but was someone that they wanted to talk about holistic business problems with. His peers stopped basically putting up their hand and saying, you actually don't know how to talk about this with me, so I'm not going to consult with you. And so his interactions changed. It helped the whole team function better, by the way. That's a whole other story for another day. But it's not magic, right? It's just what happens when we become intentional, but we have to get real to do that before we focus on the things that we have to change. And then you have to be willing to do the hard stuff. So a part of that story that I also want to bring forth that's important is not only did he go to an executive program, that wasn't like fairy dust, right? He actually had to do the work. He was going to school. And he's a busy guy. And so his dedication to that, his commitment to it, raised the whole game. So when I say to you, how you do anything is how you do everything, it is important that you think about, how am I playing the whole game at work and at home? And am I playing at a level of confidence that feels good to me? Am I interacting with people from my truth? Am I able to admit when I don't know how to do something? Or am I trying to fake it to a level that I know it and it makes me even more insecure and other people know it too? Now, Deep Work Fast is about deep work fast. So I am covering a topic here with you that sometimes takes me hours and hours and hours to do with executives. I hope you're compelled by this. I hope it resonates with you. I hope you also understand that this is happening in your home life too. And your partner, spouse, family members, children in particular, who are watching you as a role model, are the best sometimes at seeing us who we truly are. Because in our home, and so I just want to shift for a minute, we are often not caged by political norms and the politically correctness or the beliefs about how to behave at work. Also known as, we are on better behavior and nicer, and sometimes even able to admit weakness faster in the work setting than we are in our homes. So I want you to note that you doing this work on yourself, for yourself, will help everybody you care about. You will be modeling to your children, to your employees, to your friends, to your family members, that you actually want to be your best. And that's the last thing I want to say. Because I have the privilege of working with many, many people who are leaders, who also have very full lives, I get to have these conversations and bring people into a reality, and sometimes say things that feel a little ouch in the beginning, but once they accept it and start doing this work, pretty awesome things happen. And this last thing I want to say to you is, if you're going around telling other people to be excellent, telling other people, like your kids, to do their best, telling your employees that they need to be at their best, if you're telling your team to be high performance, it has to start with you. It has to start with you, right? They're all watching. They all know what they can get away with. They all know what words you say that actually translate into demonstrated behavior. So I leave you with this. How you do anything is how you do everything. If you need help with this, you know where to find me. There's a blog. You could also Google this, because on Amazon, there's at least 2 or 3 books about this topic. Okay, I'll see you next week for Deep Work Fast. Do the work. Bye.